Welcome to another great panel. This time the theme is how to speed up the digital transformation through private and public sector collaboration, the Triple-Helix model. The panel is hosted by Digital Futures, and I'd like to hand over to the panel moderator, James Gross, Professor at the Royal Institute of Technology and Associate Director Partner for Program at Digital Futures. Here he is with his panel.
Okay, thanks, Beata. Thanks, everyone, for being around. We're the thing that's standing between you and lunch, as I was informed. We prepared here the panel on Triple-Helix and societal scale digitalization. We have a couple of different perspectives that we think we can work out. And we're going to take that first with an introduction of our panelists, followed by looking first backwards into Triple-Helix success stories. And then towards the end, we'll see how that goes. We'll more look forward into the future, which is, of course, what interests us in the end most. So I would like to introduce to you, first of all, Gesche Joost. Gesche Joost is a scholar in residence with Digital Futures right now. That's why she's here in Stockholm. She's basically professor for design research at the University of Arts in Berlin. She has lots of experience in digitalization. She is a board member of the Einstein Center in Berlin for Digital Futures, kind of like a twin or a research center which has more or less the same ambition as we have here in Stockholm. Apart from that, she's co-founder of Calliope.cc, which is a nonprofit in digital education. And she's also board member of a large German software company called SAP. Apart from that, she's also on the board of ING. And she's on the board of Otto Bock, a robotics company, or like a robotics company morphed into, how do you say, substitutions of...
Prosthesis, orthesis, yeah, it's
exactly.
all connected, yeah, right.
He has also been appointed as digital champion in 2015 in Germany. So, first of all, thanks for being here, Gesche.
Great, thank you so much for having me, wonderful.
And why don't we address right away the elephant in the room?
Which is?
So, I would like to know, why is Germany so far behind in societal scale digital transformation in comparison to Sweden? And I'm allowed to ask that question because I am German.
That's really a big question. And with this keynote in the morning, with the example of Finland, I envy you so much. So Finland and Sweden, you're so digital, and Germany is so far lagging behind. So this is really insane. And I think we are doing kind of good in terms of industry, in terms of innovation, so in terms of public, so kind of citizen engagement into digital transformation, we are not doing good. We are totally amazed into cash still, I don't know why, and we are even worse in e-government. So this is really, and this is not, so sometimes we just make jokes about it, but it comes to the point that it's not funny anymore because it's really slowing down all the processes. And we saw in the example of this morning, introducing AI, human-computer interaction into digital public services is so important just to speed up the processes for anything, for any kind of big projects that you want to do. And this is really a big issue. And I think that's also because we are so obsessed with data privacy, and this is hindering us in sharing data and making use of data. And so I think it's a competitive disadvantage currently in Germany. So not the best status quo.
Very interesting. We'll come back to that. Societal aspects, cultural aspects. That's interesting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Welcome. So the next in line is Jiang Hu. I would like to introduce to you. Jiang Hu is also a scholar in residence right now here with Digital Futures in Stockholm. He's basically professor at the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at Texas A&M University. And he is an expert on algorithms for automated design of integrated circuits and chips. So welcome. Apart from that, he has many Best Paper awards. He has also an invention award from IBM. And what is very important in this engineering field, he's IEEE fellow, and he became IEEE fellow in 2016. To you, Jiang, now coming from these more, let's say, national perspectives, I would like to know, so how do you see societal scale transformation, digital transformation, if you compare the US and Sweden, with your long experience living in the US and now being a little bit here in Sweden?
I have been in Stockholm for a couple of months now, and but my observation so far is mostly restricted to daily life, and it's different from my understanding to the United States, where I spent about 20 years in academia. So I can see there's some obvious differences in daily life. For example, we don't use cash here, and everything's digital. That is very convenient. And also, I'm not sure if you know EDU Rome. That is a network for universities. That is very convenient. EDU Rome here is not only exists in university campuses, but also in the airport. That is quite convenient.
Yes.
And the third one is that when you open each new web page, there's a clear difference from the United States. In United States, you just open it, that's all. But here, every time I'm asked to the question about the cookies, you know, I fully respect that part, and but also I need to spend more time on that, you know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks a lot. Now, next in line is Pei Wang. Pei Wang is also a scholar in residence here with Digital Futures right now. He's also from the US. He's professor with Temple University. And at Temple University, he's working on artificial general intelligence, which is, of course, a very ambitious and upcoming field. Among other many different things, he's leading the open source project OpenNARS, or NARS. He's chief executive editor of the Journal of Artificial General Intelligence, and he's also vice chair of the Artificial General Intelligence Society. So, thanks for being on the panel today. Hey, for you, I have the question, how do you see the role of Triple-Helix in AGI, right? Because AGI is this topic that polarizes even more than Democrats versus Republicans in the US. Yeah? You either are looking forward to the singularity or you hate the singularity that's coming up. So do you think there's any role that Triple-Helix can play in the development of AGI?
In the long run, of course, and also it will play an important role. But the current situation is a little bit messy and confusing. What we call AGI was basically the same thing as the traditional artificial intelligence from the very beginning. And this name and this concept have been taking some kind of roller coaster fate in the past years. At the beginning, people say, no, it's simply impossible. And then there's some progress and people begin to say, oh, it's coming, it's going to dominate the world. And the Hollywood movies also play a role in this process. Then the expectation was not met. Then people say, no, this is not impossible again. So in recent years, we go through the same thing. And with the repeat progress of deep learning, and many people begin to say, oh, this artificial general intelligence is coming, and there are a lot of issues. And some general public, some people like it, some people hate it, some people is highly worried. Industry also have very different attitude. Some company is claiming they're doing it right now. Some other companies still think that's simply impossible. That's just a hype. And the public and several government, especially several European government, actually begin to try to regulate this research, just to be prepared for the possible negative impact on the society. So to me, my own research is more kind of theoretical compared to the other panelists. I didn't do much with the industry and so far. A major reason is, I think one thing I want to say in the panel is this technology is far from mature. It's still mostly in the lab. It's in theoretical stage. So I think one thing that important for the other fields is to understand the scenario and to give us more time and be a little bit patient and give us the support, but not too much attention. Some company jump into it, I think, way too fast. They actually try to produce something very soon without really understand what is going on. The same thing for the general public and the public sector, including the government. I think people should start to pay attention because this will be a very important technology. But its nature is not very certain. Even for people like me and people who have been in the field for many years, we still don't have agreement about what it will be and how to build it. Even though there are many different opinions, and we are making good progress in recent years.
Get back to that aspect of how AGI develops, and if we're really still far away from that. Let's first go to Ulf. So the last panelist is Ulf Håkansson. He's not scholar in residence with Digital Futures, but he's associated to Digital Futures through the Industrial and Societal Partnership Program that we're running. Ulf is technical manager with Skanska. He has been leading the research efforts of Skanska for a long time. He has international project development and business development experience for Skanska. Ulf, and he's finally also a graduate from KTH and has been for a long time adjunct professor at KTH.
That's true.
So to Ulf, you the question, right? So the construction industry is perhaps a good example of a vertical where recently a lot of things are happening with respect to digitalization, not really seen so strongly by the society. This is not in the foreground of, let's say, societal discussion. So why should societies care about the digitalization of the construction business?
Well, I think if you look at the construction industry, how it's structured, we often have public clients in our large projects. And if you look at the value chain, I mean, we as a contractor, we only own a small part of the value chain. So we are very much dependent on the client. And having them on board and working together with them, I mean, that's a prerequisite for getting automation into the industry. And of course, it's in everybody's interest that we get projects developed or produced in time, to budget, and to the right quality. And that's where I see automation coming in. It will solve many of those things, and you will have a healthier and better production environment, a safer production environment. And one thing that's not so often discussed when it comes to automation in our industry is that by, let's say, introducing robots then, we will be forced to have our design 100% ready. And by just having the design ready, then the rest of the production will be much smoother, and we can simulate and we can optimize. So I think, and having the client on board, I mean, for us, that is fundamental.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So let's come to the first broader topic that we want to discuss today, and that is the question around success factors and success stories in Triple-Helix, right? The traditional ambition has been, so to say, that Triple-Helix is a good model to introduce technologies in general into the public. We're running that already for a long time. Over here in Europe, it has certain styles. In the US, it has a little bit different style. So what are your opinions and what are your experiences in Triple-Helix projects and also regarding successes?
Maybe if I could start. So we have, as you were mentioning, the Einstein Center Digital Futures in Berlin, and this is a perfect example for Triple-Helix. So we have a kind of similar as here, a public-private partnership model where the industry comes to our center and says we have a research need in cryptocurrency or in secure data monitoring or whatever. And then we are funding through matching funds with the government, assistant professorships. And through this model, we were managing in just 4 years to create 50 new positions. So really a big amount and a great quality of new colleagues entering with these new topics that haven't been part of the curriculum yet into all the different Berlin-based universities. So we have 5 different universities who are part of the program. So I think that this totally makes sense on the one hand side, for the academia to push forward innovative topics into our curriculum, for the industry to get like real great access to world-class research, also to the talents and to the whole kind of environment that we were creating. So I think that this is really a great model, and the public money that's spent is wisely spent, because we were able, or based on this funding, to even get more funding from other sources like European Union. So I think that this model is great. One addition, what we need to address is the quadruple helix, so the outreach to the public. So not just kind of communicating research results, but letting citizens participate also in our research endeavors through citizen science, for example, through participatory design. Because if not, we also sometimes lack the user perspective, people perspective, and digitization cannot be exclusive. So we are really in danger if we just go forward through high tech, through the digital society, and just neglect that people have maybe different opinions or just are not part of this journey. And this is so I think we should add the fourth dimension to that one.
Okay, that's a good success factor.
Yeah.
The fourth dimension. Yeah.
I'd like to share my experience about one story. I think Triple-Helix is a general framework. It may have different variants. And one part which has not been emphasized enough is that people's natural curiosity to unknowing world. And my former colleague, Bob Byard, and he was a senior inventor at the Texas Instrument. And over his lifetime, he had over 100 patents. And most of them are planned effort by Texas Instrument. And so they set up a project, there's a proposal, they allocate manpower, they get funding. But most of these patents turn out to be not very useful. There are 3 patents that arises from his own effort, from his curiosity, just for fun. It's not planned, but got a huge impact. And 2 of them, actually, that one is LED. He's the inventor of LED. And second one is ROM, like a read-only memory that exists in almost all the microprocessors. So I think it is important to nurture this scholars' natural curiosity to unknown world. That is also an important factor to drive the progress of the digital world.
So would you, Zhang and Pei, agree that perhaps in the US, Triple-Helix is, let's say, coming a little bit with a different structure? Because, let's say, the investment into technological innovation in the US is much more, let's say, driven forward by the private industry, so either industrial partners or also venture capitalists. Whereas over here, oftentimes in innovation, it's more really this traditional Triple-Helix constellation where the European Commission or also the governments are funding relatively big efforts. Is that a perspective that you would agree, or would you disagree to that?
I'll get a quick answer, and then next Professor Wang can continue. Not entirely. And so in US, besides private sector, I think DARPA plays an important role. So if you look at a lot of inventions that affect our life, like internet, GPS, these are all from DARPA projects.
Yeah, I think that's probably highly dependent on each topic and each field. I can only talk about the field I have been working on. So basically, the situation is we haven't got much help or support from either the government or the industry. For understandable reason, because this is a long-term project. It's pretty difficult. It's not going to turn out something, very useful and also very stable very soon.
You never know.
Well, we are working on it, but so I have to say I don't have much success story or good story to share. But on the other hand, there's some good news. At least in recent years, I see the attitude toward this research have been changing. It's not like 10 years ago, it's more like a taboo. It's kind of like a dirty word. You don't want to even mention it, okay? Now people say this is serious, and they want to at least start to think about it. So that's good. But we still don't have a story which we can really show other people, say this is how the 3 different sectors should work together to make it successful. But I see we are moving in the right direction, I will say.
Okay. With Triple-Helix.
Well, I
what do
think
you
if you look at the strategic innovation programs that the government has in Sweden, there are 17 different programs. I think that is a good example of where it actually works. And we mentioned that earlier, that I think why it works is that the industry has to pay half of the money into because if they don't, the interest will not be there actually. So I think that is a success factor, that you actually have to pay money and fund the project itself. Then, of course, an obvious answer is digital futures. I mean, that's a good arena where you can find both partners and researchers and also public partners. So I think that's a good example as well.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. So with the remaining time, let's look a little bit into the future. In 20 years, will Triple-Helix still be there, or is the industry, in a sense, challenging more and more in digitalization already over the last 10 years, challenging Triple-Helix structures? On the one hand side, challenging the leadership of academia, right, in research, and on the other hand, becoming, to some extent at least, less and less dependent on the buy-in of individual societies, in comparison to the buy-in on a global scale in terms of your customers. Where is this going? Oath.
I think one important factor, we heard here earlier that in Sweden we're good at these early things, but I think we are good at the input side and the funding side, but we have to look more at the output, the implementation. I think that's where we have a far way to go when it comes to implementation. We're doing a lot of good stuff, but it stops somewhere, and then we don't know who will invest in taking it forward. So,
is there the investment culture from the US maybe missing in comparison?
I think so.
Yeah.
We don't see that so much in Sweden.
Yeah.
And for academia,
so is that just a money question? That's what stands behind
could
that.
be.
Yeah.
And for academia, we also need to look at, or the funding agency, to accept higher TRL levels. We must be very close to implementation, otherwise industry will not be so interested.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that from academia, there are great, also in Germany, great research results, but they end up in a drawer, right? So on a paper and something, but they are not implemented. So also having motivations from public funding in terms of really doing the transfer, not just kind of on paper, but really into industry. So that's a very good point. And the other one is, I think that part of our academic endeavors should address more the grand challenges and the impact on society. So kind of really understanding in terms of, how do we provide to all the sustainability challenges that we have ahead of us, how can we provide answers or be part of this this process? So I think that also stepping out a bit from the academic field for specific interdisciplinary disciplines or centers like Digital Futures to really cope with the grand challenges and to form these kind of communities with government, with industry, and with the public. I think this is also a big challenge for the next 10 years that we should accept.
Okay, will Google commercialize in a year AGI?
It's hard to say.
How far are they away?
I can only say we're making good progress, but the result is probably not many people expected. Even if it's done, it will have property people didn't anticipate, but there are many other anticipated property will not appear. So it's a long story. That's why I said I hope the other factors have more tolerance and understanding and do not try to jump into it, especially jump into very strong conclusion on something which is far from mature. That's a bigger danger actually.
Okay, so you're not worried about the strong IT labs in the US on the private side. Okay, that's very interesting. We're very reassuring, I guess, for the audience.
So I'm overall optimistic, but it will there'll be a lot of problems to be solved.
Yeah, what do you think?
Regarding Triple-Helix in the United States, I'm pretty positive. So far, it runs pretty well. And if you look at different stakeholders, government and industry and academia, each plays their own role in a very complementary way. And I think the success will continue in the future.
Okay, good. So that basically means we cannot answer that fully today. We're kind of like optimistic towards the future. And you also know what that means, right? So we will have to have that panel in 10 years again. Yeah? Okay, with that, thank you very much.
There are questions
Beata.
from the audience.
Yes.
Professor Wang, you mentioned that your research is not yet mature enough for Triple-Helix collaboration. How do you strike a balance between fundamental research versus applied research?
It's a line which very hard to draw clearly. We are doing something like, for example, the relatively mature part of our research. We are trying to use that, but not the whole thing. Before we feel comfortable about that.
So how do you determine when a project or a research project is ready for Triple-Helix collaboration?
That will have to be a case-by-case study. I don't think there is a general rule. So we can say, okay, what's your problem you want to solve, and what we can deliver from a research side, and then see whether it meets well enough. Then we can make a decision on that case.
Then a question to you, Professor Just. You brought up the aim for quadruple helix. Tell us more how this could be shaped, and please give us a few examples. And when will we see a fifth dimension 20 years from now, and what might that be?
Very good
Looking
question.
forward.
Yeah, I think the fifth dimension would be the impact on sustainability. So I think that these are these kind of great societal challenges. This would be the fifth dimension. And the fourth dimension is really about participatory design, so inviting citizens. For example, if we talk about e-government, as we heard from the Finnish example, inviting citizens to co-design these e-government
The
services.
users of the services.
Yeah, and because this is so important to get the acceptance, to get the usability, and to have a kind of really include the diversity of different skills and people and ages and cultures and so on. I think that this is very important. So it's not just kind of the transfer of knowledge in terms of, knowledge communication, but it's really getting people also involved into scientific endeavors. I think that's...
Have you personally been involved in such research projects? And what is the key to really getting that kind of collaboration to work?
We really invite into our labs people from very different backgrounds. So, for example, we did a lot of with people with different abilities and disabilities, and had them as experts for a certain project. So, for example, we invented a communication device, a glove for deafblind people. So they could communicate with us through a communication glove. So they type into our hands what they want to say. And we invented a glove which just senses on these kinds of points. And I would type into my hand an answer to your question, and you get it on your iPad. So very kind of easy technology, but this was just possible through the communication and co-participation of these deaf-blind people, because they taught us how to do it. And these are examples how this could work like.
In practice, how does it change the way you as a researcher work when you have a fourth group that is participating on equal terms, the users? Yeah. How does it change the way you work?
We are not starting with a briefing, but we're starting with a discussion. So they co-design already the briefing for the research project. So they teach us what we need in terms of academic research and applied research, and then we do it together through iterative prototyping. So they are from the even very early starting point on, they are part of the research.
With trigger material, with interviews and so on.
Yeah, and practical prototyping, sitting together and really doing prototyping.
Great answer, thank you so much. Ulf, you mentioned that Digital Futures provides a useful platform to meet with different stakeholders. Can you tell us more how it has materialized?
Well, we are running a project today together with the companies and KTH, and it's a good arena to find both industrial partners that are interested in research, and also to have access to all the research at KTH. So, and moreover, to have the public participation in that discussion is fundamental. And we're having another project which is not Digital Futures, but where we are working with the city of Stockholm as the client, and they have actually initiated and put in the tender documents what we need to fulfill in order to. So you're getting requirements on us that how we need to innovate in order to get the job.
there is a question here which may seem basic, which is what are the roles of the different actors of the triple helix? But if you would really sort of highlight what is the most important contribution of the different actors.
I think a very important part is that every part understands the other part's drivers. That is not always the case.
So you need to translate your own drivers into the language, into the context of the others who are collaborating in your ecosystem.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a lot about communication. You're all nodding, yes. That's all, and I think we are also running out of time. I really enjoyed this panel. Thank you so much for joining, for your contribution. Thanks for moderating. Thanks for being here, for being such a great audience. We are taking a lunch break for 1 hour. See you back in 1 hour.